Regulators promise to be tough on big banks. A top Federal Reserve official said Tuesday that regulators would spend the next year holding the biggest banks' proverbial feet to the fire, while working to exempt small, community banks from regulatory requirements designed for the Goliaths of Wall Street. At a Senate Banking Committee hearing, Fed Governor Daniel Tarullo said regulators will require the nation's biggest, riskiest financial institutions, those deemed too big to fail, to maintain generous crash pads to protect against potential losses in the case of the next financial crisis. Meanwhile, he said, small, community banks would not be subject to those same requirements and, in fact, should also be exempt of other, paperwork-heavy regulations under the Dodd-Frank financial reform law, like the so-called Volcker Rule. Community banks' balance sheets are pretty easily investigated by us, and their lending falls into discrete categories, which makes many of the most burdensome regulations unnecessary, Tarullo said. The biggest banks' crash pads, known as capital surcharges, will exceed the minimal standards required by international regulators and may be as high as 3.5%, Tarullo said. Shares of the biggest banks, like Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, which may find themselves subject to stricter requirements this year, dipped temporarily during Tarullo's testimony, before climbing again and leveling off in the afternoon.